By popular demand, given a great presentation from Miami last year, we welcome again Mike Redding, the Senior Director of Technical Services for Cloudmark, a division of Proofpoint. Michael. Presentations, and this is ready. And I think we're probably going to mess up your presentation as well. Just be ready.
I was trying to figure out what technical issues Nadima had,
but don't
so far we look good.
So far it looks perfectly fine there. So you're set, and I'll come back with some questions later.
Okay,
all yours.
Thank you. So I'm Mike Redding with Proofpoint. We're in the business of messaging protection for enterprises, brands, MNOs, aggregators, and CPaaS as well. So the topic of the presentation is a very, very lightweight technical overview of RCS and RBM. Not for the purposes of going in deep. We're not doing training sessions on RCS and RBM here, but for the purposes of explaining how security can still be applied into that channel. The headline title of this, full credit goes to Stuart Jones, our marketing director, is called "Don't Throw in the Towel." And that's a perfect tagline because there's a huge amount of confusion over what RCS means, what things like end-to-end encryption, Google's role in RBM, and what options the MNOs as well as the CPaaS have for maintaining security. So along those lines, let's talk about a couple of those misconceptions. I'm not advancing. Oh, big green. Got it. Okay. So we'll do this with a quiz, try to get people moving again. So first question, how many people think this is a true statement? RCS encryption removes all options for security monitoring. Does anyone think that's true? Does anyone know that's false? Raise your hand, please. You guys aren't as dumb as I thought. So RCS misconceptions are if you look at the title, of course the answer is false in this. But it has caused quite a bit of confusion, right? And encryption, is that going to change what options we have for security monitoring? And we'll talk about that in detail through the technical overview. So I'll spare you the awkwardness of raising your hands. We already know these are all misconceptions, so the answer is false. But let's go through that statement. RCS for Business will be run by Google, so there are no requirements or options for MNOs to maintain compliance and management. Is that true? No, of course it's false, right? Google plays a huge role in this. They've helped promote the growth of RCS and RCS commercial messaging, so we can thank them for that. There seems to be a strong momentum towards using Google services for that, but that does not mean the MNOs need to throw in the towel and they're not participating. It's super, super important for them to maintain compliance and management of this traffic. All right, last misconception. Again, it's false, it's a misconception, but I'll read out the statement as well. RCS for Business has registered enterprises with validated, authentic logos, so the problem of consumer fraud in mobile messaging will go away. Yeah, right. Does anyone remember the Bill Gates' famous line on email in 2004? Right, Bill Gates predicted spam would go away within 2 years. So that was 2006. Here we are. But this is a really important point, right? The logo, and I can guarantee there's future presentations about RCS business messaging. Someone will refer to the logo. This is going to solve problems. It's great. It's, that trust is awesome. Little padlock in the upper right corner is going to do wonders for helping with that. That will not remove all forms of fraud. And we'll talk specifically about that. Actually, leading straight into that. This is a slide actually I did in Toronto. And two terms that sound similar, but actually are really important to understand. The difference between spoofing versus impersonation. So these are actual example SMS messages, different forms of fraud. Spoofing is the act of impersonating an exact or pretending to be someone else, right? You have a fake driver's license, a fake ID that gets you into the bar. So in this case, someone's spoofing the sender ID FedEx or spoofing a short code. Now, spoofing has decreased dramatically. Technologies, MEF Sender ID Registry did a great job spoofing sender IDs, eliminating sender ID spoofing. When we get to RBM, we're going to have sender verification, logos, all that great stuff. It's going to be very difficult to spoof. Does that mean fraud goes away? No, not at all. And that's the difference between spoofing and impersonation. Impersonation is using other means to fake your identity. So these are actual SMSs. In this case, we're not faking the fact that it came from FedEx. We're using content of the message to make it look like this came from Bank of America, or using an alternate sender ID, Santander UK, a fake one, to make it look like it came from Santander. The last one down there is an example of impersonation of Sumit, who is the CEO of Proofpoint. So in that case, we're having enterprise level impersonation. So this form of impersonation, super, super prevalent in SMS. This is the primary type of fraud that we see today, is people not impersonating the short code or the sender ID that they see, but using content of the message to fool people into thinking they're someone else and giving out their credentials and their credit card. We've seen an explosion of impersonation carried over to MMS. MMS impersonation has increased 300 to 400% in the past 12 months. Why? It's pretty convincing. I mean, these are real examples. Over on the left, they have logos that says the name of the organization. All the same stuff that everyone says in RBM is going to make all the problems go away are in these exact examples. That's got a logo. It says Royal Bank. It looks legitimate. It's that much more convincing form of impersonation, and the average consumer will fall for that. Similar for the next one. The last one is actually a PDF attachment attached to an MMS message, a new form of fraud that we're seeing. Looks just like a legitimate thing from the IRS. Probably the only illegitimate thing in there is I never get a refund for $45,000, but otherwise it's pretty convincing. And think about the average consumer who doesn't know about RCS, RBM, all this technology. This is pretty convincing stuff, and they're going to continue to fall for it. So here's the technical part, and super simple. So before anyone throws rocks and garbage at me, because this is technically not really accurate, the point here is to discuss what options we have for maintaining security in RCS and RBM. We have, so one of the key important things to understand is the differences between the path that an A2P message takes, an RBM message takes, is different than the path that a person-to-person message will take. Very important concept. It also means we need to apply different security controls for those two paths. There's plenty of people in the room here that are in charge of the success of business messaging. So you may only be interested in the top half. We've got to figure out how to secure that. We can secure it with logos and things like that. But the success of the top half, commercial messaging and RCS, is dependent on security and the success of person-to-person messaging in RCS. That is a really important point. Because if you look on the right-hand side of this slide, there's one little group of handsets, right? We're technical geeks. We're all messaging geeks in this room. So it's interesting to understand these two different paths. The people on the right-hand side receiving those messages, they don't know the difference. They don't care that one was validated and went through Google servers and showed up with a little padlock on the top. They don't know the difference. So if the bottom half remains insecure and allows forms of fraud like we saw in the previous slide, then it decreases the value of the upper half. So I'll make that statement again. The success of that top half, which is really where the money is dependent on the security of the bottom half as well. So both of these need to maintain secure, or remain secure. So the other piece in here, as part of the misconception as well, is those green boxes, the map gateway, RCS services, for many operators are going to choose to use Google to provide those services. Seems to be the default option. Why not? Google's providing a cloud-based service, highly scalable. So why wouldn't you use that? Well, that's going to vary. It's going to vary around the world. Some people will continue to use. Other geographies, may not trust Google and may be deploying their own. It really doesn't matter. The paths are the important part, and the reality that both the aggregators and CPaaS, as well as the operators, can have a role in that is independent of whether you're using Google's cloud services or deploying some of your own services. The last piece in this picture, it's a bit of an anomaly, but I included it, is done on the bottom half of the slide, Apple iMessage. I included it. I didn't include WhatsApp because WhatsApp is a different channel, shows up in a different app. I included Apple iMessage because iMessage shows up in the same Apple messaging client. So RBM commercial messages, RCS P2P messages, and Apple iMessages all show up in the same compliant. Back to the point I made earlier, consumer doesn't care. It's in the client. It's a message. It says you're supposed to do something. I get asked probably 2 to 3 times a week from family, friends that got an iMessage spam. Is this real? Is this legit? Am I supposed to pay my EasyPass toll? Sure enough, no, but they don't know. They don't know the difference. It shows up in the client. It's all the same to them. All right, so let's talk about A2P path. Pretty simple. Again, not getting too deep and technical. Brands aren't going to directly send messages. They'll, of course, always be working through a provider like Cinch or Twilio or one of the others. And they submit those messages into Twilio. At that point, Twilio, Cinch, and others have full access to that messages. So access to who it's going to go to, access to the content, everything they need to impose security on that. As the message gets transmitted to what's called a map gateway, that's the application gateway that gets into the RCS network, that is also point-to-point encrypted, meaning the map gateway has the ability to also inspect the message. So all the stuff we've been doing for decades, examining messages, tracking content, tracking reputation, is completely still viable in this world. So we've been working with several operators. This seems to be the architecture that multiple operators as well as aggregators, the fact that this is point-to-point encrypted, meaning the servers, as this thing hops along the way, all have access to that message, means we can use a lot of the same techniques that we've perfected in the past to examine this content and apply the security controls. So that includes spam filtering, compliance monitoring, this new term that I've been hearing in the past couple of months called drift detection, understanding that someone used to behave in a certain way and they've drifted to a new form of sending. Well, if we have full access to that content, we can apply all those same controls, right? And it doesn't matter if you're an aggregator, CPaaS, or you're the MNO, you have the ability to insert that level of control into that messaging flow and do almost all the exact same things we've been doing for decades. The other key point in this is spam feedback. Right? So a super, super valuable signal that is enabled by both Apple and Android is that simple report junk button. Apple and Google did us a tremendous favor by cleaning up that button. It's now using proper APIs to send stuff to us. That data is super, super valuable. It is enabled for RCS today. I'll show you some examples. We're collecting RCS spam report data, RBM spam report data. It's already flowing. Feeding that data into these systems allows us to do tremendous things. Very, very quickly detect threats, allows us to do complaint rate monitoring, all the types of things that allow us to keep this very, very secure. So plenty of options using traditional techniques to secure RBM. Let's talk about P2P. Maintaining P2P security is critically important. I reinforced that a couple times in the previous slide. Those impersonation techniques that I showed are today being sent over P2P channels, or at least many of them. And that will be the main threat vector. Doesn't mean that there won't be threats in the official A2P channels, but those impersonation techniques, those fake texts from the IRS, those fake texts from Netflix or wherever it is, will likely be on the P2P channel, but will affect the effectiveness of the A2P channel. So this is where it gets more difficult, right? Consumers are demanding end-to-end security. Apple made a big promotion. iMessage is secure. SMS is insecure. WhatsApp is promoting the same thing as well. End-to-end security is a big deal. So this is not 100% true yet, but let's assume for now that over time, due to consumer demand, end-to-end security will become a big thing. I believe Apple will soon support RCS encryption, the next version of iOS. What that means is the only two devices that can actually examine the content, the devices way on the left and the devices way on the right. The servers in the middle cannot examine content. They'll know who it's going from and who it's going to, but they can't examine content. So again, do we need to throw in the towel? Absolutely not. But do we need to think about this problem differently? Absolutely, we do. So what is true about end-to-end encryption? Well, that device all the way on the right has the unencrypted message. Apple and Google have done us a huge favor. They put report chunk buttons in that. Those act on the unencrypted messages. That data becomes that much more valuable, that spam report data, because we can't examine it at the server level anymore, but we can still rely on the fact that people can click that button and send us an unencrypted version of that content back to a central collection point where we can monitor and very, very quickly detect that there may be fraud going on. What that derives, because we can't run some of these things in network anymore because it's end-to-end encrypted, is the importance of a sender reputation system and mitigation platform. So taking that data, figuring out who the fraudulent senders are, very similar techniques, but applied in a slightly different way, but similar techniques to what we've always been doing in the past, can still be applied against that data and then used to do sender-based shutdown. So Google provides APIs, and even if you're using Google's core RCS services, they provide APIs to do sender-based shutdown. So it's a little different path, a little more difficult than the traditional paths of sticking spam filters in the network, but the ability to act upon that data is still there. Apple iMessage, still a bit of an anomaly on the other one. Apple closed ecosystem, going to be a little more difficult to get APIs into that, but certainly in the RCS ecosystem, we'll have the ability to act upon those messages. Let's take a look at that spam feedback. So that spam feedback is critically important in both the RBM channel as well as the P2P channel. And it is available today. It is being collected today. Those buttons already are providing data to us today. Over on the left-hand side is spam feedback for RCS business messages. You can see the SIP addressing over on the left-hand side, sample content. This is, of course, all text-based content, not the rich stuff. But it turns out every single one of those, even though some look a little bit questionable, those are legitimate. That doesn't mean it's not useless data, or that doesn't mean it's useless data. It's still useful to know. What are people complaining about? Is my campaign not optimized? Is the wording incorrect? Did my complaint rate jump? But it is also important for us to help detect fraud, and there will be fraud in the RCS business messages channel. RCS P2P, this looks a lot like the stuff we've always expected. These are real messages, easy pass notifications. I get several of those a week now, mostly over iMessage, thankfully. UPS delivery, Amazon refund messages coming in over RCS P2P. So this data about who sent those and what the content is, very easy to quickly detect that this is fraud, trace it back to the source number, and now we have the options to take action on that. Very, very powerful. It's available today. It is being provided by the clients, which is a great favor that Apple and Google have done for us. All right, so knowing that there are technical options to apply security to both the RCS business channel and the RCS P2P channel, both important. Why should MNOs and CPaaS care about this? So I'll talk about it in three different parts. So MNOs for business messaging. Why bother? Why bother investing in technology and worrying about security in RCS business messaging? I hope that is a rhetorical question, right? This is a product. It is a carrier product, right? I know Google may be offering some of the services, and is this a Google product? Is this a carrier product? This is a carrier product. There are product managers in this room getting bonuses based on the success of commercial messaging. Tell me who has launched a product without thinking about security successfully. There probably have been people that tried to launch a product without security and it became unsuccessful very fast. Security is key to the success of this product. And the MNOs have a responsibility for that. The other factor in MNOs maintaining that level of security control through what I displayed in that diagram is it does open up the option of maintaining control of that RBM flow. Ladima talked about the duopoly. I can't predict what's going to happen with WhatsApp. What are they going to do in the future? Is Apple going to still remain sort of silent in this world or emerge and try to do something different? Hard to predict what's going to happen in the future, and I won't claim to be an oracle with that, but maintaining control of that flow where it's in the flow of the carriers is a pretty important point, because that's the only thing I can guarantee is those diagrams that we showed are probably going to be very different in 2 years. There's going to be different players on the right-hand side. WhatsApp's not going to sit silent. If RBM starts to actually take off, they're going to alter their strategy, and the operators maintaining security or maintaining part of that flow is super, super important. On the person-to-person side, why should MNOs care about person-to-person? Again, Google's kind of taking care of that. Why bother? The success of RBM and commercial messaging is dependent on the security of person-to-person messaging. Maintaining that in control, analyzing those spam reports, having the ability to do number takedown is super, super important. Consumers don't know the difference between a message that showed up through a P2P channel or a message that showed up in the commercial channel. It's all the same to them, and that is key to the success of commercial messaging. And in addition to that, the primary threats will move, or actually already are, a part of the person-to-person messaging stream. That's where the impersonation is going to occur, and now it has the advantage of rich messaging, logos, brand names, bots behind it that can look like you're truly communicating with your bank. All that's possible of person-to-person messaging, and that's where the predominant fraud will maintain. On the CPaaS side, why should CPaaS care? Why bother? Why doesn't we just let Google take care of security? It's imperative, and hopefully that's, again, a rhetorical question. CPaaS today are in the deliverability business, right? They want highly valued, highly trusted messages. That's what makes this a valuable channel. So imperative that they monitor this data and make sure they're maintaining high deliverability and high trust. The higher that trust is, the higher the deliverability is, the higher the value of the product is. In addition, we do live in a regulatory world. These are carrier products. Carriers can impose fines. Countries can impose fines. There's an example in Australia. I think Telstra just got fined almost several $1 million, I think, for allowing consumer fraud and impersonation in the network. So simply through the regulatory fining option, very, very important for CPaaS to maintain security through that. So key takeaways, back to don't throw in the towel. Security is critically important. There are different options depending on whether we're talking RBM versus P2P messaging, but securing both is critical to the success of commercial messaging over RCS. With that, we can move to questions.
I'll come here with one question from my side before we open it up. Well, almost a summary. You cover a lot of things. One thing you seem to be saying, first of all, is we need to rethink of what we mean in terms of RCS security. Lots of things have changed. SendReady, it's a great first platform, but there's more. The second part, I don't know if it was challenging, but I'll say, you are saying Proofpoint was been there. You've got a history of filtering and checking things and getting all of those inputs back in, that loop continuing. Currently in RCS, specifically the P2P part, that is not available unless, do I get it right? Unless we make that clear, unless you ask for that participation. And is that a message for the operators in the CPaaS side?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, messaging has transitioned to Google person-to-person services. We have complications like end-to-end encryption. Operators have less of a role in that channel. But given the importance of commercial messaging, it is imperative that they ask to participate in that channel. So that spam feedback is one of the simplest things we can do. End-to-end encryption, oh my God, how are we ever going to see what the content is? It's encrypted when people decrypted when people click that button. But get access to that data. I know the US carriers have done that. There's mechanisms with working with Apple and Google to make sure that data can go back in. That's the first line of defense to building a standard reputation system that now can be used to make sure the operator participates in securing that channel, not being solely reliant on Google.
You got a great feedback loop, which now you have to capitalize and make sure you do for most of them. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yeah, absolutely.
Are there questions? Oh, I see quite a few. We'll start from the back.
Yeah, that was great. A lot of really relevant information. I field a lot of the same questions from family and friends regarding like the Easy Pass tolling texts that are coming through on iMessage, and the reporting spam button works great for allowing the consumer to be able to provide that information back, especially on encrypted messaging. How long until we actually see those kinds of messagings being blocked or prevented by Google or or on Android or iOS to where that we are actually going to be able to see that spam be reduced and prevented?
I'll speak a little bit from personal experience. So I used to be on Android and decided I'm going to try this iOS thing for a while. I actually get almost exclusively iMessage spam right now. So I'm actually very proud that we've done a pretty good job at carriers of locking that down. Apple's a bit of an anomaly right now. It's a closed ecosystem for that. But what that does tell me is because we've had success in carrier messaging, and we've invested in that, we've invested in spam filters, we've been able to secure that, they shifted over to iMessage. I mean, in reality, Apple is not doing enough at this point. The techniques are there. We can prove that from the success we've had in securing carrier messaging. It's overall pretty secure. Apple needs to step it up. So the techniques are there. Apple just needs to start investing and making sure that they're doing the same.
Jonathan, sorry about that. Jonathan Eansar from Verizon. Mike, thank you for the presentation. How can you, we, et cetera, better differentiate between spam and scam? There's one button, and it may be pressed because people just didn't want to read that. It may be because they know it's fraud, whatever, right? We've been talking, and I think it's hugely important to talk about the fraud piece. But as a general matter, how does that same reporting differentiate between fraud, scams, and I don't want it, I don't remember subscribing to it, spam?
Yep. Anyone who knows Proofpoint or the division of Proofpoint that I come from, Cloudmark, we've been a proponent of the spam button all the way back in the email days. We kind of invented the report spam button that's in email. What we've learned, and this is about 2 decades of learning, is don't ask consumers to make that distinction, right? Keep it simple, one button. The differentiation has to happen on the back end. And keep it simple for them. You want that input. Anyone want to take a guess what the largest type of messages reported to us in late October, early November? Big surprise.
Oh.
Yeah, it overwhelmed. We were at about a 400% increase in button clicks, almost all political. It wasn't a scam. It wasn't anything else. It was just an unwanted message. But don't burden consumers with that. Let them click the button. It's up to us to make that determination. And there are algorithms. They're imperfect ways of doing it, but make the analysis happen on the back end when you collect that data. And that's one of the tricky things of using that data. It is an absolutely imperfect signal. People click the button for anything. They click it as a delete button because their table's ready now. So click that report junk button as a delete button. That is the challenge of us as operators and technology providers, is to sift that through. Don't put that burden on the operator or on the end user.
Great. We're running very late, about half an hour, but Inderpal, remember, brownie points for me to let this question.
So in your diagrams for checking spam, fraud, you showed a map gateway, right? What sort of option does a carrier have if they don't use a map gateway for spam and controlling fraud, spam, etc.?
If they don't do a map gateway, you could take the approach of the P2P channel, right, is not participate in that flow and only do the option of agent shutdown for RBM messages. You also don't need to pull a full-blown map gateway. Google is providing core API services, right? Why not take advantage of that? You don't need to replicate the full map gateway. So some carriers are looking at options to do something much more lightweight, acting more like a proxy into the front end to the Google services. This is evolving. Let's just put it that way. 6-12 months ago, I think it was true that operators were considering throwing in the towel. It's all going to Google. There's nothing to do. What's happened in the last 12 months through conversations, everyone realized, hold on, there's various ways to insert. We can take a lighter weight approach of just shutting down agents that we deem are malicious, or a more proactive approach of actually inserting something in the stream. And it's evolving. I know some operators, we're working with multiple that are considering insertion into the stream. Others are taking a wait-and-see approach and are maybe just doing agent shutdown based on other data they have.
No more question now. I need to stop you. I need to thanks again, Mike, for these great views.
Thank you.